Hey, you guys want to talk about this tweet that I had here? I got some good stuff. What I wanted to talk about today was not just card games, but a card game related discussion that circled around the fighting games. Steve Rubin Zoo. This is one of the designers that works on Runeterra. He's like a former Magic player, and then he now works on Runeterra, which is Riot's card game. And he had some interesting things to say about the newest patch and their designs and balance and stuff. When working on balance design for Runeterra, how did you approach the trade-offs of a game based around proactive units versus reactive removal? He says, we love dynamic back and forth games and wanted games to revolve around champs, so our removal is deliberately inefficient. Burst combat tricks being so strong compared to removal creates fighting game moments, which can reward proactive play and create action and stacks. One thing that they wanted to do, differently than other card games, have a lot of interaction between you and your opponent. If you played other card games, you played Magic, you played Hearthstone and stuff, you know that sometimes in card games, strong decks will just not engage with you at all. Some deck that just goes face and ignores everything you put on the board. They don't care about what you're doing at all. They just don't interact with you. Nothing like that. There's lots of stuff in other card games that can feel really non-intuitive, non-interactive. So they wanted the game to feel like there's a lot of interaction between players. Games have talked about trying to increase the amount of times there is player interaction between two people in fighting games lately, right? It's been a lot of the discussion of like, we want to remove all the hard stuff, so it's just you and your opponent like making decisions against each other, which you want the decisions and the hard stuff in there. You don't want to just be decisions all the time, or you can just make a card game. Anyway, they say that these combat tricks are really strong because it creates fighting game moments, right? If removal is strong, removal is just like, kill a card, kill a unit, blast a unit off the board. Then there's not really a lot of interaction. You play a unit, the unit gets blasted off the board. Your unit's dead. All right, next turn. They want there to be action in combat so that it's back and forth. You buff this unit, then I counter this with this, then I do that. They want there to be back and forth there. The follow-up tweet says there's much warranted criticism around elusive, fearsome, quick attack, overwhelm, reducing interaction. These are important to our system, and we want to combat defender's advantage, allowing players to attack more. When the correct play was no action or no attack, our game was not as fun. In fighting games, when the correct response to most situations is to do nothing, it feels really bad. There was one of those FGC translated, or one of those translated things from Daigo that was like, in a fighting game, if you're not moving the lever or hitting, buttons on the joystick, the game is boring. The less you do that, the less fun the game is. Even if you're playing a character who's defensive, or even if you're playing a character who's zoning, you want to be doing some kind of action. Like, you want there to be constant choice that you have to be making. You can't just be sitting there doing nothing the whole time and waiting for your opponent to do something that's completely reactable and then punishing it, right? It's like whoever moves first just loses every time. That feels bad. Doing nothing should be the right answer sometimes. And knowing when to do nothing should be something that you smartly choose to do. You want all kinds of styles of play to be viable in your game. You just want it to be a choice you have to make instead of the only choice, where succeeding with one play style is impressive and it's not just like, oh, well, everybody's doing that. It's the same kind of thing. I'm a kind of player, I like sitting there and just doing nothing. I like just walking back and forth, being super slow, just big chilling. I'm that kind of player, but I'm telling you, I don't want it to always be that way. The aggressor needs to have options to get in, and the defender needs to work to keep them out. I made a reply to this where I said, fighting games are very similar. If the correct action is always to do nothing, the game ends up feeling very solved very quickly, right? It's just you sit there and wait, and if your opponent makes an action, you counter with whatever it is, or you block it out and you go back to doing nothing. If you want a good example of active characters, right? Look at a character like Guile, or look at a character like Glacius or something like that. Characters that are constantly putting stuff on screen. Yeah, even the match yesterday, Broski versus Problem X, where they were playing, and Dawson is just, he's doing buttons, he's anti-airing, he's throwing fireballs, he's sliding, he's teleporting. Like, he's doing action constantly. You don't want the characters to be doing nothing. Yeah, even look at Morgan in Marvel 3. Morgan is like a character that zones you, and she is just so, like constantly putting projectiles on the screen. Was that too degenerate? Sure. But it's not sitting there doing nothing. This applies to all aspects of the game, though. If the attacker has no thoughts required, like there's just one strong thing they can do over and over and over and over without having to think about what tools they should use, that's bad too. There should be a genuine, like, you have to think about your choices on defense. You have to think about your choices in neutral. You have to think about, you want your decision making to happen frequently in fighting games, because that's the part that's exciting. And that's the part that, in theory, should be like hard to tell if you're making the right choices until, you know, you really sit down and think about it. Yeah, that's a great point too, is that choice and the reward for the move are not always tied together. In fact, they're often separate. There's always going to be strong moves that are safer to do, easier to do, like high reward, low risk. There's always going to be moves like that, but you don't want it to end up being so degenerate that it's the only proper option. Who made this tweet? Ruben Zoo, the live design lead for Runeterra. He has hit #1 on the NA ladder for Runeterra each ranked season so far. So he plays the game a lot. It's not like he's unfamiliar with his own game. You know, card games they're not fighting games. They obviously are similar to chess in that there is a timer that you use to make decisions based on what's happening. But this game in particular, they try to incentivize action, reaction happening back and forth and making your opponent make decisions. It's not the same kind of thing as fighting games, but I think the important takeaway is that they have found, you know, this is true in every game. Cue the Cloud clip of him blocking for 40 seconds against Goku Black. Do you have that clip? I know that Cloud, that's perfect. That's a perfect example. Is there even audio on this clip?
Okay, defense. Damn, my man has no mix, dude. What do you do? What do you do?
What do you do besides thanks CJ Grayson? Thanks very much.
What do you do, bro? What do you do, bro?
Anyway, you know, chat room, I think one thing you'll find is looking at game design tweets from anybody who play any genre, you'll see that there is usually similar thoughts on how people approach things, you know? What is the biggest hurdle for newcomers to fighting games? When a new player gets hit, they just don't know why. It doesn't occur to them to think to themselves, why did I get hit there? Why did I get hit in neutral? Why did I get hit in this position? Figuring that stuff out is like a foreign concept to their brains. This guy's mashing faster than I am. There's a lot of reasons too. There's a lot to understand and wrap your head around.